Good afternoon, Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. This is Rich again, back for your second video blog of the day for Monday, August 3rd, 2015, around 3:28 in the afternoon, Belleville, Massachusetts. Nice and sunny day out. A little humid, but it's a little bit of a sea breeze and stuff like that, so I don't know if it reached 90 in this area. Some news to report. Happy National Watermelon Day. And also, MeTV is going to debut Madlock on August 31st at 10 in the morning, and it's 4 weeks away. Partridge Family Marathon on Antenna TV on August 15th. And WWE Hall of Famer Superfly Jimmy Snuka has been diagnosed with stomach cancer. So prayers to the Superfly as he battles and fights stomach cancer. Hope he beats it. That's about it on the news. My second video blog subject of the day is this will be a kind of a weekly or semi-weekly series about fantasy booking scenarios for professional wrestling angles in the past, or things that should have happened in the world of professional wrestling and stuff. And this will be very good that I'm going to be doing this. I used to do fantasy booking years and years ago for like MySpace and send it to close personal friends. I used mainly professional wrestlers, current or retired ones, and a lot of time long close personal friends. But I'm not going to be doing that anymore because that's been in the past. So there's not going to be any fantasy booking scenarios of Julie Platt facing off against Heidi Lee Platt in pillow fights. That's not going to happen on these video blogs. And the first one I'm going to be doing today is a scenario that was being built up in 1996 in WCW, the first 2 months of the year, involving Brian Pillman and Kevin Sullivan. Brian Pillman representing the Four Horsemen, and Kevin Sullivan representing the Dungeon of Doom and stuff. And this angle did not really play out where it was supposed to go because WCW fired Brian Pillman and stuff. It was a work shoot and stuff. He was supposed to come back, and this scenario I'm going to tell you for the fantasy booking scenario would have been probably played out and stuff, and it would have been awesome and stuff like that. So we're going to go back to February 1996. Take the DeLorean back right now, and we're not Dr. Emmett Brown, or we're not like Marty McFly and stuff. We're not going to go 88 miles per hour pretending we're going back. Okay, here's the scenario. Super Bowl 6 was the last time Brian Pillman wrestled a WCW match. He faced off against Kevin Sullivan in a strap match, and it only lasted 2 minutes, and then Brian Pillman quit when he said, "I respect you, Booker Man." Kevin Sullivan was really the booker of WCW and stuff like that, like in real life. So anyway, it picks up after this. The next night on Nitro, with pretending that Ric Flair won the WCW World Title, and Arn Anderson and Chris Benoit and Brian Pillman were there to celebrate them winning, Ric Flair winning the WCW World Title again and stuff, and they have Woman and Miss Elizabeth and stuff. But then the Horsemen get mad at Brian Pillman about like he was like disrespecting the Dungeon of Doom and Kevin Sullivan and Jimmy Hart and the Giant and all the others. And then next thing you know, the Four Horsemen attack Brian Pillman, lay him out on the ground, and then they have the Dungeon of Doom come out with Kevin Sullivan, the Giant, One Man Gang, the Barbarian, Main, Shark, and Loch Ness, and Zodiac and Jimmy Hart also beat up like Brian Pillman. He's out cold and stuff, and he had to be taken out on a stretcher and stuff. And the Four Horsemen and the Dungeon of Doom are working together as one and stuff like that. Pillman's like out and stuff like that, and they write him out of the storyline for the next several weeks and stuff, so he's selling the injury and stuff like that. But at Uncensored 1996, there was a match for like between a kind of a triple steel cage match between Hulk Hogan and Randy Macho Man Savage and stuff. And then faced off against Ric Flair, Arn Anderson, and the whole Dungeon of Doom. But in this fantasy booking scenario, it will be Ric Flair, Arn Anderson, Crippler, Chris Benoit, and the entire Dungeon of Doom, and also Lex Luger and stuff. And this scenario would have like Hogan and Savage continue, beating up all of these heel wrestlers and stuff like that. But then out all of a sudden, like the loose cannon Brian Pillman comes out, returns from selling the injury and stuff, and then he kind of interferes in the match and stuff, and he cost Ric Flair, Arn Anderson, and Chris Benoit and the rest of the Dungeon of Doom the match, and Chris Benoit accidentally opens up the cage to let Brian Pillman in and stuff like that, and like with Brian Pillman being up on like the rest of the Four Horsemen and the Dungeon of Doom, but he did not hit Chris Benoit. And then on the next night on Nitro, the Four Horsemen and the Dungeon of Doom, like Kevin Sullivan and Arn Anderson and like Ric Flair, fire everybody in the Dungeon of Doom, and including Chris Benoit. They throw him out, except like Kevin Sullivan and the Giant and Lex Luger and stuff. But the rest of the Dungeon of Doom and Chris Benoit are fired from them, and then they have Flair and Anderson and Sullivan and Luger and the Giant and Jimmy Hart attack the rest of the Dungeon of Doom members and Chris Benoit and stuff. But then Brian Pillman comes in and he saves the day and stuff like that. Then he takes Chris Benoit and stuff, and then they go doing this, the Four Horsemen and stuff. And then Brian Pillman goes on the mic and says, "I'm forming my own Four Horsemen," and stuff like that. Me and the Crippler are going to take out Ric Flair, Arn Anderson, and Kevin Sullivan, and the Giant, and Lex Luger. We're all going to take them out and stuff. We're recruiting everybody. First two people that Brian Pillman and Chris Benoit tried to recruit are Hulk Hogan and Randy Macho Man Savage. Both of them reject Benoit and Pillman's advancements to form this Four Horsemen. Pillman and Benoit are playing the tweener roles, while like Hogan and Savage are faces, and the rest of the like Flair, Anderson, and the Giant, Kevin Sullivan, and Luger are heels. So they're just playing these roles and stuff like that. And this angle's going to get even better and stuff like that. A few weeks later on a Nitro, they have a WCW World Tag Team title match between the Arn Anderson and like Kevin Sullivan facing off against Luger and Sting, and Luger turns on Sting, and like Sullivan and Anderson are like new WCW World Tag Team Champions, and Luger's still firmly behind like the Dungeon of Doom and the Four Horsemen, which left over. And then next thing you know, Pillman and Benoit ask Sting to join their Four Horsemen and stuff. Sting rejects the idea of joining, the Four Horsemen and stuff like that, because Pillman and Benoit are still tweeners and stuff and that. So Pillman and Benoit are like in trouble to find like members to help them join an alliance for them to beat the Four Horsemen and the Dungeon of Doom and stuff like that. Then it continues on and stuff like Pillman and Benoit continue to recruit other members like of WCW. They ask the Blue Bloods, they reject them and stuff. They asked Hacksaw Jim Duggan, the Disco Inferno, Dean Malenko, Eddie Guerrero. All of them get rejected by 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 them and stuff like that. And Pillman and Benoit are like, you know, they can't find anybody and stuff like that. But they kind of had a plan all along and stuff, because Pillman was, you know, like bad-mouthing, you know, the Dungeon of Doom and the Four Horsemen, and saying that they said to, like, they said an interview on Nitro that Pillman and Benoit says there's evil lurking in the Dungeon of Doom and the Four Horsemen and stuff like that, what was left over and stuff like that. And then they come to, like, Slamboree 1996. It was the Battle Bowl, the Lethal Lottery. And then they have a WCW World Title match between Brian Pillman and Nature Boy Ric Flair for the WCW World Title. And this match is about like 20-25 minutes and stuff. And it ends up a big smudge where, like, Benoit interferes and the rest of the Dungeon of Sullivan and Anderson and Luger and the Giant Jimmy Hart come down, interfere as well. But then there's a big guy who comes running down. He's 7 feet tall, and he attacks the Giant. He attacks Luger. He attacks Flair, Anderson, Calvin Sullivan. He is Ron Reese, who played the Yeti before, which was flopped, and he was a super ninja. He's the new member of Pillman and Benoit's group of the Rouge Four Horsemen and stuff, and the crowd goes wild and stuff like that. But still, Pillman and Benoit are still tweeners and stuff like that. And then at the winner of the Battle Bowl of the Lethal Lottery, who won that in like that battle in that tag teams, was Lex Luger. So he had to get a title shot at the Great American Bash in 1996 against Ric Flair. And then this starts like the recruiting with Pillman and Benoit and like Ron Reese trying to get Lex Luger to join the 4th member of the Rouge Four Horsemen, and then it causes all dissension among like Anderson, the Giant, Kevin Sullivan, and Jimmy Hart. They were they were like, you know, telling Lex Luger to not join and stuff, and they said they were going to cancel the match, but they said WCW, they had like a commission of a suit of WCW says if Ric Flair and Lex Luger do not like have that match at Great American Bash 1996, both of them would be fired on the spot, and they would put the WCW title like in a tournament and stuff like that. And like they had the Nitro before the Great American Bash 1996. They had like Reese like beat up on like all members of the Four Horsemen, and they had Pillman and Benoit coming in as well, and also they knock out the Giant. They knock out like Kevin Sullivan and Arn Anderson, and Jimmy Hart, but Lex Luger was nowhere to be found. And then they have like the Reese and Pillman and Benoit cut the hair of the Giant completely, kind of rape his dignity, and the fans were kind of, you know, starting to boo big time, like Pillman and like Benoit and Ron Reese and stuff like that. It was actually kind of starting the seeds of the planted face turn of the Four Horsemen and the Dungeon of Doom group to their side, and then Pillman's Four Horsemen group were turning from tweeners to heels and stuff like that. But Lex Luger was nowhere to be found. But then at the Great American Bash 1996, it's Ric Flair facing off against Lex Luger for the WCW World Title. Jimmy Hart's in a neutral corner and stuff like that. It's about like 20 minutes and stuff until the referee gets knocked down. And then Jimmy Hart comes up in the ring. He says begging for this to stop and stuff like that. But then Ric Flair pushes Jimmy Hart away. But then like he drops the megaphone. Lex Luger grabs the megaphone, hits Ric Flair over the head with it, and then the referee comes back, and then it's 1, 2, 3. Lex Luger's the new WCW World Champion. But then they had that Brian Pillman and Chris Benoit and Ron Reese come down, and then afterwards, and Lex Luger and Jimmy Hart are all together. They hug together. Lex Luger's part of the Rouge 4 Horsemen with Jimmy Hart. That gets the rest of the 4 Horsemen enraged and stuff like that. The announcers were saying Jimmy Hart's just a snake in the grass and stuff like that. But this feud continues on. The next night on Nitro, they have an interview with the new 4 Horsemen with Ric Flair, Arn Anderson, Kevin Sullivan, and the Giant. And Kevin Sullivan said that he hated Jimmy Hart from day one. He just said he is no good. He's just a snake in the grass. He's not loyal. And also Lex Luger's not loyal as well. They took away the world title from us, and we're going to get revenge on them and stuff like that. And then the next Nitro, it continues on with more smashes and stuff like that. And Lex Luger then challenges all the members of the Dungeon of Doom to a kind of a running of the gauntlet match in Nitro. He beats all of the members of the 4 Horsemen, which is the new 4 Horsemen with Ric Flair, Arn Anderson, and the Giant, and Kevin Sullivan beats them all with help from Jimmy Hart, and the Rouge 4 Horsemen are just getting more and more heat and stuff. And then they have at the Bash at the Beach 1996 pay-per-view, they have as follows. They have the Giant against Ron Reese in kind of a big man challenge match, which goes the Giant wins by choke slamming him and stuff. But then the other members of the Rouge 4 Horsemen attack the Giant, knock him out cold. And then they have Arn Anderson and Kevin Sullivan put up the WCW World Tag Team titles on the line. They were still champions against the loose cannon Brian Pillman and Chris Benoit. Chris Benoit and Brian Pillman won with interference from Jimmy Hart and also Ron Reese and stuff. But they put in a contract now that it was not 2 members of it was not Pillman and Benoit as the champions. They had Reese as well, so they were using the Freebird rule in that. And then at the main event was Lex Luger against Ric Flair for the WCW World Title. Luger wins again. He beats Ric Flair cleanly and stuff. And this continues on. This Rouge 4 Horsemen against the original 4 Horsemen feud continues on for several more weeks on Nitros. More smashes, more feuds and stuff like that. And then it goes to the next Clash of Champions, where it's the same results and stuff, with Reese being the Giant and Pillman and Benoit and Reese being Kevin Sullivan and Arn Anderson using the Freebird rule. But Ric Flair and Lex Luger's match goes to a double disqualification and stuff with interference by everybody. And then this feud continues, but it culminates at Fall Brawl 1996 in the War Games with Brian Pillman and Chris Benoit and Reese and Lex Luger facing off against Ric Flair, Arn Anderson, the Giant, and Kevin Sullivan under these stipulations and stuff like that. Meaning if the Rouge 4 Horsemen win, then Ric Flair, Arn Anderson, Kevin Sullivan, and the Giant retire from WCW and stuff like that. But if the regular 4 Horsemen win, they get 5 minutes with Jimmy Hart, and Ric Flair on the next night in Nitro gets a world title shot against Lex Luger and stuff. And this War Games was over about 20 minutes and stuff like that. And then it was Ric Flair, Arn Anderson, and the Giant and Kevin Sullivan win when they put Reese was put in the figure 4 leg lock by Ric Flair, and Ric Flair submitted. And then Ric Flair gets 5 minutes with Jimmy Hart, beats him up completely, puts the figure 4 leg lock on him, and he's screaming completely out cold, but Ric Flair refuses to let go and stuff. He has been dragged out. Jimmy Hart goes out on a stretcher and stuff like that. And then the next night on Nitro, to culminate this feud, Ric Flair beats Lex Luger with help from the rest of the Four Horsemen to regain the WCW World Title. And that's how it would play out with this fantasy booking scenario and stuff. It's pretty good and stuff like that, but that would have probably happened if Brian Pillman stayed with WCW in 1996 after Super Bowl 6. That would be very interesting if that happened. Hey, I could be a booker for WWE. Hey, I could give it a shot. Well, my third and final video blog of the night's coming. It will be about WWE Hall of Famer, the late great Jack Briscoe. And keep calm, and I'm a Julie Button guy. Molly Rosenblatt of Fox 35 Rocks. And in the words of Sean Lucha, get out! Bye!